Hello everyone. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at almost the reverse process of what we've been doing. We're going to be now starting with a table of values, and we're going to look for a pattern and use it to construct a rule that looks something like this. So the first thing we're going to focus on is recognizing the patterns that happen in a table of values. And we're going to specifically look for a couple of things. The increase in the y values, and we're going to match that to this number. And we're going to look for something called the y-intercept and match that to the constant term, this number. So, some revision here. The coefficient is a word we use for a number that comes in front of a letter. The coefficient is, it doesn't matter what number, it doesn't matter what letter, it's the number that is paired together with a letter. The other thing we need to remember is the constant term is just the number without a letter. Doesn't matter what number it is, as long as there's a number by itself, that's what we call a constant term. Okay, we're going to have something like this. The first thing we need to check is, are these increasing by 1? Do we have a plus 1 up here? In this case we do. That's good for us. We want the x values to be increasing by 1 in our table. And they pretty much always will be in the questions that you're given. Okay, the second thing we want to look at is how much are the y values increasing every time? So what did we have to add to 3 to get to 7? And then from 7 to 11. It's actually plus 4. So that means the coefficient of x is 4. Remember, the coefficient of x is the number in front of the x. Now, the last thing we're going to identify is what we call the y-intercept. Now, the y-intercept on our Cartesian plane is the point where our line crosses the y-axis. Now, the key thing we know about this point is that we don't have to crawl anywhere. Anywhere on the y-axis, we haven't crawled left or right. That means our x value is 0. So that's what we're looking at here, circled in green. We're looking at the point where x is 0. That is the number that needs to go here. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If x was 0, this would disappear, and all we would have left is that point. If we were figuring this out in our previous lesson where we were trying to construct these tables of values. So let's quickly just go through another example. The numbers on top are increasing by 1, so we're happy. We don't have to do anything extra. The numbers along the bottom are decreasing by 3. Sorry, increasing by 3. So we know that the number in front of the x needs to be a 3. The last thing we look for is the point where x equals 0. And we have a minus 2, so we write that down here. And this rule gives this table of values. If you want a good practice to get into is to pick one of the points and just check it. Let's check 2, 4. And see if our rule works. We'll substitute in our values. X equals 2, y equals 4. And then we'll simplify. 4 stays the same. 3 times 2 is 6, minus 2, and then we end up with 4 equals 4. We're happy. That means we've come up with the correct rule. You may get some examples like this, where you're given the graph and you have to construct your own table. But we should be fairly comfortable with doing this, because all we need to do is read off the points. Minus 1, minus 3, 0, minus 2, 1, minus 1, 2, 0, 3, 1. I was just reading off these and writing them down into my table. Now we'll check. These are increasing by 1, so we're happy there. These are also increasing by 1, so our equation is going to look like this. Remember, when we have a 1 out here in front of the x, we actually don't write our 1. As mathematicians, we can get kind of lazy sometimes. And now we look for our point where x equals 0. We can see it also over here as the y-intercept. And our y value there is minus 2. So that's our rule for this graph. Now, I want you guys to have a go at this one. This one is going to be a little bit trickier because we don't have the point x equals 0 in our table. But I want you guys to have a go at it anyway, and pause the video, and after you've had a go, come back and I'll show you the full solution. Okay, so we're going to check that these are going up by 1, and they are, so we're happy. Our y values are decreasing by 2. So we know our equation is going to look like this, y equals minus 2x, but we don't have the point x equals 0 to figure out what our constant needs to be. So how can we approach this? We're going to pick a point, let's choose this one, and we're going to substitute it into what we have. We have so far y equals minus 2x. We're going to put these values in. And we're going to simplify. Now, we've got here minus 5 equals minus 6. Now, what do we have to do to this minus 6 to turn it into a minus 5? Well, we have to add 1 to it. Let me put that in a different color. We have to add 1. And then we're going to end up with minus 5 equals minus 5. So we're going to take this extra 1 that we have to add, and it is going to be our constant term, plus 1. And that's how we approach it. If there is no x equals 0 value, just choose any point, substitute it in, and see what you have to end up doing to make both sides of the equation equal. All right, you guys are going to have a couple questions to do to practice that. And after you've done that, you should be very comfortable with recognizing the pattern in a table of values, matching the increase in y values to the coefficient of x. That's the number that goes here in front of the x. And then you're going to match the y-intercept where x equals 0 to the constant term over here. Thanks, guys.